Through the Codex Astartes, his extensive treatise on the restructuring and organization of the Space Marines, Guilliman's legacy reshaped the Blood Angels Legion into the chapters that defend the Imperium today. Guilliman sought to ensure that no one individual could ever again command the devastating power of a Space Marine Legion. To achieve this, he decreed that the Legiones Astartes be divided into smaller autonomous units of 1,000 warriors each. Some of his surviving brothers railed against this dissolution, perceiving it as an injustice and a slight against the integrity of their legions. During a time when emotions ran high and weary souls saw treachery and judgment in every remark, this edict threatened to ignite a new imperial civil war. Ultimately, Guilliman could not be denied, and one by one his surviving brothers and the leaderless legions relented. The Legiones Astartes were no more, and the chapters of the Adeptus Astartes were born. For the Blood Angels, this division was a cruel double blow. Their Primarch Sanguinius was dead, slain by Horus's own hand in the final moments of the heresy. Now, without time to grieve their father, nor recoup the terrible casualties suffered during the Siege of Terra, this close-knit fraternity was to be sundered. The survivors lacked an obvious leader, and worse still, the first signs of their genetic flaw were beginning to manifest within the ranks of the Legion. The Blood Angels' encounters with the Scions of Chaos had left them deeply scarred, and the horror of their master's death was a visceral wound upon their souls. Since fighting against the demons of Khorne and Slaanesh at Cygnus Prime, a nascent thirst had awoken within the Legion. The aftershock of Sanguinius's death at the hands of the War Master had cursed their souls with what would come to be known as the Black Rage. Though the heresy was over, for the Blood Angels, their greatest trial was just beginning. From the midst of this sorrow and tragedy arose the chapters of this new birth, referred to as the Second Founding. While each legion determined its own method of division, and some experienced a more harrowing road than even the Blood Angels, the sons of Sanguinius were at last united by the sole survivor of the Sanguinary Guard, Azkaelon. Accounts from this time differ greatly, but all concur that at Azkaelon's council, the survivors of the Legion formed a small number of chapters, commanded by the champions of the Blood Angels. Each new chapter adopted the traditions and rites of their legion as the basis for their brotherhood and chose fitting names. Thus began a period of rebuilding for the sons of Sanguinius, who separated to establish themselves as autonomous organizations. Notably, even in this time of disarray, the vengeful chapter master Nasir Amit, known by his peers as the Flesh-Tearer, led his eponymous chapter on a blood-soaked crusade to seek out and annihilate any vestige of the traitor legions. Their actions, even in the early years of the Flesh-Tearer's existence, laid the foundations upon which they would be known and judged ever after. In the thousands of Terran years that have followed, there have been several subsequent foundings of Space Marine chapters, and through these, the number of chapters raised from the genistock of the Blood Angels has also risen. Each newly forged chapter helps to cement the legacy of their Primarch Sanguinius, ensuring it lives on as long as they fight. Over time, it has become evident that though all of these chapters started from the same legion, they have diverged to varying degrees. Some, such as the Angels on Carmine, have established a reputation beyond reproach and a legacy of heroism as honourable as their founding legion. Others, however, are barely recognisable. Indeed, the Carmine Blades were a chapter mistakenly believed to be descendants of the Ultramarines for a considerable time. This misconception persisted until a chance meeting with Astaroth the Grim in the late 41st millennium revealed the truth behind their origins. The Carmine Blades finally had an explanation for the strange symptoms they had worked so hard to conceal. They now had names for the red thirst and black rage that they had previously been unable to explain. It is well known that the sons of Sanguinius maintain a strong unity, convening on significant matters when necessary. In these conclaves, it is customary for all present to defer to the chapter master of the Blood Angels. However, throughout 10,000 standard years, there have been times when another voice was considered more senior. One such instance occurred in the 35th millennium when the newly appointed Lord Commander Kalael succumbed to the Black Rage. During this period, the brothers from the Angels Sanguine and Angels Vermilion jointly assumed seniority, overseeing the response of the Sons of Sanguinius to Warg, Vangrod, the Chaos incursion of Silas Gorehand, and the later phase of the Nova Terra interregnum. This cooperative spirit has repeatedly led the Sons of Sanguinius to unite against formidable enemies. A notable example of this unity was the battle on the Archaeotech world of Hell's Hollow in the 37th millennium. The Angels, Encarmine, Blood Drinkers and Blood Angels joined forces to crush a massive Chaos cultist uprising and the subsequent demonic invasion. Similarly, in the 40th millennium, a combined strike force of the Knights of Blood and Flesh Tearers routed a large Eldari army from the maiden world of Kal Eath. This spirit of cooperation extends beyond the brother chapters of the Blood Angels, as they have often fought alongside other Imperial armies. For instance, during the Third War for Armageddon, the Flesh Tearers and Blood Angels bolstered the defences against innumerable Orcs, and the Blood Drinkers rescued the Cadian 35th Regiment on Helios Alpha. During the Second War for Armageddon as Orc War, Ghazghkull ravaged the Imperial hive world of Armageddon. The Blood Angels, along with the Ultramarines and Salamanders chapters, arrived to aid the planet's defenders. Lord Commander Dante's reputation was such that Tushan and Marneus Calgar, the chapter masters of the other two chapters, ceded overall command of the entire Space Marine strike force on Armageddon to him. The Blood Angels bore the brunt of the close-quarter fighting, culminating in a mass drop-pod assault into the heart of Warlord Ghazghkull Mag Uruk Thraka's Orc forces, which finally broke the back of the massive greenskin army. The future Blood Angel Raphan was born on Baal Secundus, the son of a tribal chieftain and the brother of Archeo. Both brothers were aspirants in the Blood Angels chapter's blood trials to determine if they would become Space Marine neophytes. After being challenged to a seemingly simple task by Blood Angels Sergeant Corris, Raphan failed and despairingly marched into the desert, expecting to die for his loss in the blood trials. However, the Thunderhawk-carrying Sergeant Corris, Raphan's brother Archeo, and the other successful aspirants, was caught in a massive storm during its ascent and crashed near Raphan's location. Rushing to their aid, Raphan helped Corris defend against the dangerous native wildlife of Baal Secundus that was drawn to the crash site. Having saved the Space Marine and his new recruits, Sergeant Corris noted that due to losses among the aspirants from the crash, there was now a spot among the Blood Angels candidates for Raphan after all. After becoming a Space Marine, Raphan swiftly rose to the rank of Sergeant, commanding his own squad within the Blood Angels. He played a pivotal role in the recent significant events affecting the chapter, particularly in the aftermath of the supposed rebirth of the Primarch Sanguinius through Raphan's brother, Archeo. This was part of a scheme orchestrated by the traitorous inquisitor of the Ordo Hereticus, Remius Stele, who had become a devotee of Tzeentch. Stele aimed to destroy the Blood Angels from within by transforming them into servants of chaos, using the power of the Lord of Change to deliberately mutate Archeo. During a battle on the Shrine World of Sabian between two factions, Raphan was ultimately forced to kill his brother, saving the Blood Angels from chaos corruption. Raphan also played a crucial role in defending against an assault on the Blood Angels' fortress monastery on Baal by Fabius Bile, the renegade Chaos Space Marine apothecary from the Emperor's Children Traitor Legion. Bile was obsessed with genetically engineering the perfect warrior. After the Blood Angels emerged victorious, Raphan was assigned a mission by Lord Commander Dante, the Chapter Master, to recover a phial of the blood of their Primarch Sanguinius, which had been stolen by Bile during a conclave between the Blood Angels and their successor chapters, the Sanguinary Brotherhood. Raphan's secondary mission was to execute Fabius Bile for his transgressions against the chapter. After a prolonged and futile pursuit, Raphan received assistance from his blood cousin, Nox of the Flesh Tearers chapter. The two Space Marine sergeants combined their squads to hunt down Bile, launching an assault against a powerful renegade Magos of the Adeptus Mechanicus named Mathun Zelik. Zelik had been making deals with Bile, who had usurped the identity of another Mechanicus tech priest named Haran Serpens, the same alias Bile had used to infiltrate the Blood Angels chapter on Baal. The confrontation with Zelik took place aboard the Archaeohort, an ancient and unusual Adeptus Mechanicus excavation starship crewed by servitors and the elite cybernetic warriors of the Mechanicus, the Skitarii. By leveraging a turncoat within Zelik's ranks, Rafen, Nox and their men navigated their way to Zelik's trophy room. There they destroyed the relics recovered by the Magos and forced his surrender to prevent his work from being undone. During the battle, Rafen lost his bolter to a trap laid by Zelik. However, he found among the relics a plasma pistol bearing the name and chapter markings of Arion, a long-dead hero of the Blood Angels, which he took as his new sidearm. With the Archaeohort, Tycho and Gabriel on loan from the Flesh Tearers, Rafen and his men journeyed to the planet Dinicus V, where Zelik had last interacted with Fabius Bile. The planet was unique in that it had suffered a Tyranid attack, yet the oceans remained intact, leaving several aquatically mutated Tyranid specimens leaderless and feral. Sacrificing the Archaeohort, Rafen, Nox and their men descended to Dinicus V using a submersible to approach Bile's suspected base of operations. During the approach they battled large Tyranid creatures akin to legendary krakens. In the underwater skirmish, Rafen was separated from his allies and floated to the surface, where he was captured by Bile's mutated slaves and taken to the Primogenitor's laboratory and fortress. Disarmed and implanted with a genetically engineered maggot that immobilized him, Rafen was brought before Fabius Bile. Bile, lost in his delusions of grandeur, revealed his plan to clone the Emperor of Mankind himself. Though wounded and weakened, Rafen managed to attack Bile and seemingly killed him by tearing out his neck. However, Bile was not dead. Shortly after, Rafen was thrust into a bizarre arena where he had to race against mutants and captured space marines from other chapters to avoid death. In the audience, Rafen spotted Bile, alive once more. During the race, Rafen convinced Tarikus of the Doom Eagles chapter to join him in an uprising against Bile. Meanwhile, Nox and the remaining men under his and Rafen's command launched an assault on the fortress. Ceres, a librarian in Rafen's squad, psychically contacted Rafen and instructed him to target a strange warp signature to prevent Bile from escaping. The warp signature turned out to be a captured and harvested Tyranid zoanthrope, which Bile had manipulated to create warp portals and keep the Tyranids on the planet away from his fortress. Curiously, the zoanthrope welcomed its death at Rafen's hand. In the ensuing battle, Fabius Bile was killed no less than 4 times, revealing the truth when Rafen and a handful of his allies encountered 2 copies of Bile at once. They were merely clones of the true Fabius Bile, who was not even on the planet. The last clone of Bile possessed the coveted vial of Primarch Sanguinius's blood that he had stolen from the Blood Angels' fortress monastery. Rafen managed to take the vial and inject himself with the blood to defeat the clone. Exploiting Bile's last-ditch escape attempt, Rafen, his men, and Bile's Space Marine slaves teleported away from Dinicus V, while the feral Tyranids ravaged the fortress. Despite most of the chapter being engaged against the Tyranid Hive fleet Leviathan on the galaxy's eastern fringes during the Third War for Armageddon in the year 998 of the 41st millennium, Commander Dante still dispatched the Blood Angels' Third Company, led by Captain Erasmus Tycho, to defend Armageddon from war boss Gajkul's massive assault. Gajkul spearheaded the largest orc Warg in Imperial history to besiege the strategically vital Hive world once again. In the fierce conflict that followed, Captain Tycho succumbed to the Black Rage and met a heroic end as part of the Blood Angels' Death Company on the walls of Hive Tempestora. Brother Captain Machiavi succeeded him as the commander of the Third Company. In the year 998 of the 41st millennium, a tendril of Hive fleet Leviathan set a course to strike the Blood Angels' homeworld, Baal. It was soon reported that the Krypton Shield, the shield worlds of the Kryptus system intended to hold back the Tyranids, had fallen. Compounding this dire threat was a vast demon army led by the bloodthirster Kabanda, which had already attacked Ammonai, the outermost planet of the Baal system. Facing potential war on two fronts, Lord Commander Dante issued a call for aid to all the Space Marine chapters descended from the Blood Angels, the sanguinary brotherhood. The flesh-tearers were the first to respond, committing their entire chapter to Baal's defense. Ultimately, every Blood Angel's successor chapter, except for the Lamenters, answered Dante's call. This included the Knights of Blood, who, despite being declared excommunicate traitoris by the High Lords of Terror centuries earlier, still believed themselves loyal to the Emperor and their progenitors. The Blood Angels braced for the greatest threat they had faced since the Horus heresy. As the time of ending cast its shadow over the galaxy and the shield worlds of Kryptos neared collapse, the sons of Sanguinius had more reason than ever to stand united. For the sons of Baal are at their strongest when destiny calls for great deeds, whether defending the gates of the imperial palace on Terra or the vitrified sands of an alien world, they will not be found wanting. Thus, the Blood Angels launched themselves into the Imperium's most significant and devastating wars, fighting with such vigour and determination that they inspired awe even among their fellow Space Marines. Recently they have been stretched thinner than ever, simultaneously engaged in the Third War for Armageddon, operations around the Eye of Terror, and battling the oncoming horror of Hive Fleet Leviathan. Commander Dante and many of his finest battle brothers faced the cryptoid tendril of Hive Fleet Leviathan on the shield worlds of Kryptos. This splinter fleet was headed straight for Baal, the Blood Angels' homeworld, and its advance had to be halted. The Blood Angels triumphed over their Xenos adversaries, but Baal remained at risk. Dante's forces raced through the warp to return and strengthen the defences of their chapter planet. However, they were still many solar weeks away when they received an urgent message from High Chaplain Astaroth the Grim. A new threat had arisen in the Diamor system, an invasion by the armies of Chaos that could weaken the defences of the Cadian Gate in preparation for Abaddon, the Despoiler's 13th Black Crusade, if allowed to succeed. High Chaplain Astaroth was already en route with the Blood Angels' 5th Company, but more strength was needed to defeat the traitorous foe. With a heavy heart, Commander Dante diverted much of his own force, knowing that each warrior sent away was one less to defend Baal. Yet they were the Blood Angels. They could do no less. Dante continued towards Baal with little more than an honour guard at his side, while the rest of his warriors turned their voidcraft towards the Diamor system. The tides of the warp proved unpredictable. The warships of the Blood Angels' 1st and 2nd Companies managed to gain significant ground on Astaroth and his 5th Company warriors, translating into the Diamor system just minutes after their brethren. It almost seemed as though some other force desired their simultaneous emergence into real space. This slight delay proved crucial, as it was all that saved First Captain Carlin's forces from sudden damnation. Upon establishing contact with the 5th Company's vessels, Death Company Chaplain Daynor informed him of their dire situation. As the Blood Angels' ships translated into the system, they were suddenly besieged by a powerful psychic attack. This warp sorcery engulfed the Blood Angels' void ships like a storm, but its effects on the minds of those on board were even worse. The storm induced visions every Blood Angel hoped never to see, triggering the chapter's genetic curse, the Black Rage. Though the exact numbers were uncertain, it appeared nearly the entire 5th Company had succumbed. There was a brief pause as Carlane absorbed this devastating news. The Black Rage. All Blood Angels feared its touch, but to have it induced by the enemy's sorcery, it was a profound violation. Astaroth, Death Company Chaplain Daynor, the other chaplains on board and their librarians, all those with psychic training or psychic defences, had survived. The rest had fallen to the curse. The helots who formed the warship's crews had cloistered themselves in terror, with some having been slain by the afflicted battle brothers. Chaos reigned aboard the vessels of the 5th Company. First Captain Carlin immediately dispatched the chaplains of both the 1st and 2nd Companies, as well as the Sanguinary Guard, to aid the beleaguered survivors and bring the fallen under control in an attempt to restore order to their ships. After bringing their fallen brethren under control, and assessing the broader strategic situation in the system, the Blood Angels launched their attack without delay. They had to act swiftly, as the enemy's plans were already well advanced. Crimson Slaughter warbands were entrenched at all the primary Mechanicus hubs. As anticipated, enemy forces heavily occupied the northern and southern hemispheres of Amethal, concentrating around multiple dig sites. At Hub Beta Secundus, the Death Company deployed in 2 waves. Chaplain Daenor and his warriors landed within the Mechanicus complex, positioning themselves between the Crimson Slaughter's advance elements and their objective. The Crimson Slaughter had targeted the 5 major Mechanicus force concentrations on the planet. The 5 zones were designated as War Zones Carnage, Cruelty, Hatred, Malice and Perdition by the Crimson Slaughter. Lord Crannon the Relentless personally led the advance in War Zone Carnage. Astaroth and Lematis commanded the main force of the Death Company against the dig site's outer defences, aiming to encircle them in a tightening ring of destruction. The Crimson Slaughter soon found themselves trapped against the defensive lines they had recently breached. The Death Company's devastation was overwhelming. The Crimson Slaughter were pushed back on every front, forced to huddle among the wrecked defences on Beta Secundus's outskirts. Many traitors became sluggish and clumsy, burdened by uncontrollable mutations or engulfed in warp energies that caused them to burst into flames. The Crimson Slaughter's attack lost all momentum, fragmenting as it was caught between the Death Company and Mechanicus forces. Daenor proudly observed that his Death Company warriors fought with extraordinary strength and courage despite their affliction. The enemy had thrown everything at them, from brass-sinewed demon engines to vile warpcraft. Yet Daenor's warriors prevailed. The Blood Angels pressed their attack, determined to annihilate every last traitor on Amethal. Leading elements of the 1st, 2nd and afflicted 5th Companies, alongside Astaroth the Grim and Lemart, managed to rout the traitor forces. The arrival of the Blood Angels shifted the war's momentum on Amethal, enabling a coordinated counter-offensive across all fronts. The Death Company's assault on Hub Beta Secundus resulted in Crannon the Relentless and his elite guard being thrown into disarray. For a while, it seemed the war was decisively turning in the Imperium's favour. However, the Chaos response proved unexpectedly devastating. The true mastermind behind the traitors' attack, Chaos Sorcerer Zorphus of the Black Legion, had anticipated this outcome. While enacting a dark ritual, a massive World Eater's murder fleet, led by the infamous Berserker Khan the Betrayer, arrived in system. This force, known as the Butcher Horde and led by Khan himself, along with Berserker Lords Korbodash and Vraka, launched an immediate Dreadclaw drop pod assault on Amethal. Khan appeared at the vanguard, slaying Imperial forces with unimaginable brutality. The Butcher Horde soon faced fierce resistance as the Death Company clashed head-on with the World Eaters. Khan, favoured by Khorne, duelled Death Company Chaplain Daenor, but was led into an ambush by an Imperial Reaver-class Titan of the Legio Metallica. This marked the beginning of a counter-offensive by the Loyalist Titan Legion, decimating traitor forces. However, the sheer numbers of the traitors soon began to overwhelm the Blood Angels. Astaroth and Chaplain Daenor's expert leadership restored some order to the afflicted brothers' ranks. Spearheaded by the furious Chaplain Lemart, the Death Company countercharged, dictating the battle's shape rather than waiting to be overwhelmed. This daring move slowed the Khornate advance. Nevertheless, the massively outnumbered Blood Angels sustained appalling casualties. Over 90% of the Death Company were slain before multiple engines of the Legio Metallica reached the engagement area. The Titans' thunderous advance drove the Khornate forces back, fracturing their cohesion and providing time for Astaroth and Lematis to extract the remnants of their forces. Chaplain Daenor, hacked and mangled by Khan the Betrayer, was borne from the battlefield by Astaroth himself. The loss of the Death Company brothers was considered acceptable, as their destiny had always been to perish in selfless battle, selling their lives dearly. However, Astaroth would not allow Daenor to perish, for the Death Company chaplain was among the most accomplished of his order. In the aftermath of the Titans' attack, the surviving Cornate warbands scattered from Hub Beta Secundus, marauding in search of blood and skulls. The remaining Legio Metallica war engines also disengaged, their strength needed elsewhere to defend against the fresh waves of demon engines being flown in from Ireline. The danger was not limited to Hub Beta Secundus. Across the surface of Amethal, Imperial counterattacks were being repelled or ground down by large packs of newly forged demon engines. The traitors were receiving a steady stream of powerful reinforcements, whereas the Imperial forces were not. By the grim arithmetic of war, it was only a matter of time before Chaos forces achieved victory. The Blood Angels' attack on the demon engine factories of Ireline seemed destined for costly failure until the manifestation of a mysterious power that has long aided Sanguinius' sons in their darkest hours. Blazing with golden light, the Sanguinor descended from the storm-lashed heavens and rallied the Blood Angels. With the aid of their avenging angel, the Blood Angels successfully destroyed the Hex Infernium, cutting off the traitors' reinforcements of demon engines. As the crimson slaughter continued to bleed against the might of the valiant Blood Angels, the Chaos sorcerer Zorphus revelled in the fruition of his machinations. Zorphus planned to use the slaughter and carnage on Amethal to power the Chaos artifact known as the Banshee Stone. This would create a vast warp rift that would drown the Diamor system in a tidal wave of demons. The resulting destruction wreaked by the Neverborn would extend Abaddon the Despoiler's crimson path from Cardia to Diamor and eventually to Terra itself. Following the Archangel's destruction of Ireline, the war for the Diamor system reached its climax. Within solar hours of the Hex Infernium's obliteration, the Imperial leadership received reports of intensified combat across the star system. Chaos ground forces mobilized for a decisive strike. The time had come for victory or death. Provoked by Eileen's destruction, the Black Legion launched a direct assault on Amethal. They focused their entire might on Hub Beta Secundus and the dark prize hidden there. Imperial forces gathered, forming a great noose, marshalling their strength to deliver the final blow and eradicate the Chaos threat once and for all. The plan was devised by Captain Aphel, whose forces formed the southernmost element of the offensive. In unison, the armies of the Imperium advanced across the burned-out kill zone cleared by the Mechanicus weeks before. They charged into a blizzard of fire hurled from the Black Legion's warships above. Barrage bombs exploded with enormous force, sending knights sprawling and turning squads of Skitarii to ash. Lance beams hammered Titan void shields or atomized squads of assault marines. Despite the heavy bombardment and horrific destruction, the Imperial forces did not falter. While the battle raged on the planet below, vast warships dueled in the void above. The Adeptus Mechanicus understood the true prize the Black Legion sought on Amethal, even if few others did. It was the lure that had drawn techno-archaeologist Dominus Ivasnophon and his followers from the forge world of Metallica to this cursed planet. It was a power of unbelievable magnitude, sought for very different reasons by the Imperium and the traitors. Sorcerer Zorphus knew its true nature, for it was he and his cabal who had located it for Abaddon. The Despoiler had set his forces in motion as soon as it was identified. The battle to come would impact the success of the 13th Black Crusade, offering an opportunity to extend Abaddon's crimson path like a bloody wound across Imperial space. The secret the Black Legion sought, and that the Adeptus Mechanicus raced against them to seize, lay deep beneath Amethal's surface. It was ancient, unimaginably so. Known as the Banshee Stone, it was a device the size of a world, forged by godlike beings before Terra had even spawned its first single-celled organisms. It was a cage for the infernal creatures of the warp, a weapon to dwarf the damnation cache that had slipped through Abaddon's fingers on Pandarax. According to Zorphus and his followers, it was full to the brim with howling demons. It required only the correct ritual to be broken open, at which point the sudden release of so many warp entities would tear a gaping wound in reality itself. As the battle between the Blood Angels and the Black Legion raged on, the Chaos Sorcerer Lord Zorphus reached the edge of Warzone Carnage's main excavation site at Hub Beta Secundus. His objective? was the gate to the ancient demon cage. With the help of the Crimson Slaughter, Zorphus had identified the weakest points in the cage's wards where the inmates' powers could seep through. Despite the Blood Angels fighting the forces of chaos to a standstill and seeming poised for victory, the heroes of the Blood Angels sensed they had been manipulated into attacking too late. Once their foes were driven off, the red-armoured warriors hurried down the earthen ramp into the eerie depths of the excavation site. There they confronted the horrifying chaos artifact known as the Banshee Stone, a twisted crystal the size of a boarding torpedo, surrounded by blood seeping through the cracking bedrock in lapping waves. Although the ritual was incomplete, Zorphus realized he was out of time. Unlike the incident at Pandarax, the Banshee Stone had reached a terrifying level of disharmony, causing significant damage to the wards holding the demon cage closed. It might not rupture immediately, but it wouldn't hold for long. With a thunderous psychic command, the sorcerer ordered a retreat. Leaving the Banshee Stone to run its course, Zorphus and his cabal surged up the ramp leading out of the pit. Flanked by black-armoured Terminators, the sorcerer and his acolytes unleashed the full force of their psychic powers to push back the advancing Blood Angels. Once they secured enough breathing space and established a clear teleport lock, the Black Legion warriors vanished in a blaze of warp light, leaving the enraged Blood Angels behind. On the planet's surface, the slaughter continued for many solar hours until the last of the traitor forces were eliminated. It was only through the combined efforts of librarian Asmasael and his psychically attuned brothers that the Banshee Stone's hideous lament was finally silenced. By that time, the traitor fleet had scattered, heading towards predetermined retreat coordinates. The Blood Angels then extracted their forces from Amathal's surface. In the solar hours that followed, a roiling blast wave swept across the planet, obliterating all traces of chaos industry and leaving behind nothing but blackened, glowing ash. It took 7 solar days for the fury of the global firestorms to subside into mere fume and smoke, by which time the planet had been reduced to a ravaged shell. The destruction was unimaginable, but the Blood Angels had secured their victory, dealing a significant blow to Zorphus's forces. Of the Sanguinor, there was no sign. Karlan himself had seen him escape the destruction of Ioline, a streak of gold soaring into the heavens. When the hour grew dark again, he would return to aid his brothers. The Imperium believed they had won a great victory on Amathal, foiling the despoilers' plans once more. However, librarian Asmasael realized that the enemy had inflicted more damage on the Banshee Stone than initially thought. Perhaps defeat on Amathal had not been avoided, but merely delayed. Unknown to the Imperial forces, the cracks in the crystal that served as a demonic cage had spread beyond repair, even if anyone living knew how to fix them. The energies of the Banshee Stone were no longer needed. It was only a matter of time before Zorphus and his followers completed their diabolical task. The bars of the demon cage were breaking, and the process had already begun. As they gathered their forces to depart the system and return to Baal, the Blood Angels left behind librarian Asmasael and a squad of 10th Company scouts. Their mission was to remain on Amathal, gauge the true extent of the damage done, and stand watch in case the prison of the Banshee Stone ever threatened to break asunder. After sacrificing the shield worlds of the Cryptus system to fend off the Tyranids' initial advance on the Baal system, Baal itself faced an intense assault from Hive Fleet Leviathan. Despite significant losses, the Hive Fleet's sheer mass blotted out the stars. Lord Commander Dante reinforced the Blood Angels' homeworld and its moon's defences like never before. Proactively, he launched numerous preemptive strikes to delay, confuse and reduce the living armada. Hundreds of splinter fleets were defeated this way. Dante's plea for immediate aid from the Blood Angels' successors did not go unanswered. The Flesh Tearers were the first to respond, and eventually all successor chapters except the Lamenters heeded the call. Even the Knights of Blood, declared excommunicate traitoris by the High Lords of Terror, came to bolster the defences. However, it was still insufficient. Hive Fleet Leviathan, adapting rapidly, could not be thwarted by the same strategy twice. The fleet advanced steadily, clearing the entire surrounding sector of life before making a planetfall on Baal and its twin moons. The first 19 waves, each larger than the previous, were repelled at great cost to the Blood Angels and their successor allies in the Sanguinary Brotherhood. 5 chapter masters fell during these bitter battles, 3 in the battle at the Dome of Angels alone. The Tyranids began absorbing all biomass from Baal and its moons, even the radiation-poisoned deserts of Baal Secundus. With their defences in ruins and the moon stripped and broken, the remaining Space Marines retreated to the rubble of the Blood Angels' fortress monastery. There, they prepared for a last stand as the next wave descended. Doom seemed imminent for the sons of Sanguinius. At this critical moment, the Great Rift tore open the galaxy following the fall of Cadia to the 13th Black Crusade, and the already ravaged Baal system was battered by etheric storms. No further waves came from Hive Fleet Leviathan, but not a single Imperial defender survived on Baal Prime. On Baal itself, the Tyranids had enough forces to destroy the Imperial troops many times over. Despite no hope of victory, Commander Dante led his troops in a series of increasingly desperate retreats. As the final perimeter fell, the stars reappeared. Looking skyward, the Tyranids on Baal sought contact with their Hive fleet, but it was gone, replaced by a newly arrived Imperial fleet. Rabut Guilliman and his Indomitus crusade arrived like avenging angels. After many more battles, Baal was finally cleared of the Xenos threat. A massive rebuilding of both the world and the chapter began, for the Blood Angels and their successors were desperately needed elsewhere in the beleaguered Imperium. The fate of Hive Fleet Leviathan remains a mystery, though a clue was found on the now barren moon of Baal Prime. Xenos skulls were piled impossibly high in the despised 8-pillared symbol of one of the Blood Angels' most ancient and terrible enemies, the bloodthirster Kabanda and his army of Kornati demons. Rabut Guilliman and Archmagos Belisarius Cawl arrived on Baal bearing a majestic gift. Emerging from the hibernation chambers aboard Cawl's freighter hulk, the Zarquesita, hundreds of Primaris Space Marines joined the fight, aiding in the final destruction of the Tyranid swarms. These exceptional warriors donned the colours of the Blood Angels, Blood Drinkers, Flesh Tearers, and more. They embodied the might of the Primarchs, strengthening the depleted ranks of their adoptive chapters at a critical time. The Scions of Sanguinius welcomed these reinforcements wholeheartedly, along with Cawl's technology, to recruit and create additional Primaris battle brothers. Commander Dante had never anticipated witnessing his chapter's final days, yet he faced them with unwavering resolve. He also never expected to see the return of a Primarch, yet he knelt before Rabut Guilliman with a grateful heart. When Guilliman appointed Dante as his regent of the Imperium Nihilus, the weight of destiny pressed heavily on the Lord of Baal's shoulders. With the fury of the Great Rift unleashed, a darkness more terrible than any in the Imperium's history looms ahead. The Blood Angels now stand before this darkness with the throne of terror at their backs, ready to fight as never before. This new duty imbues them with revitalized purpose, and the arrival of the Primaris Space Marines brings fresh hope that perhaps the sons of Sanguinius will not fade like a dying ember. It is said among the Blood Angels that Commander Dante has never stood taller, even in the face of such dire adversity. The regent of the Imperium Nihilus has vowed to cleanse his dark new realm of the taint of chaos, even if it takes another 1,000 Terran years and more. For it is amidst the darkest night that these golden angels shine the brightest. From the earliest days of the Imperium, the Blood Angels have fought to defend the Emperor's realm. In spite of the darkness that gnaws at their souls, the sons of Sanguinius have proven themselves true heroes time and again. Even now, as their days darken towards night, they remain a beacon of hope amid a galaxy of war. Few Space Marine chapters are as consistently committed to the defense of the Imperium as the Blood Angels. Whilst other chapters like the Ultramarines act as the guardians of particular star systems or sectors of the Imperium, the Blood Angels see the entirety of the Imperium of Man as their responsibility to protect. As a result, the chapters Astartes have been spread thin and have suffered higher than average rates of attrition. Nevertheless, the Blood Angels' roll of victories is amongst the most honourable in the Imperium, and the fame of the chapter has spread across the galaxy. The campaigns listed below are those that the chapter itself considers the most worthy of commemoration. In every iteration, the Ninth Legion stood apart from the typical standards of the Legionis Astartes. In its earliest form, it operated with such a rudimentary order of battle and command structure that it could barely be classified as an army, consisting primarily of massed infantry companies with few specialized troops. These troops often formed Reaver squads, optimized for close-quarters combat and wielding weapons that required minimal resupply. They were the ideal warriors for operations conducted far from the main force of the Great Crusade. The Legion's aberrant quirks, particularly the red thirst that haunted its warriors, wreaked havoc on discipline and made large-scale organization challenging. Tactics were typically developed and employed at the company or even squad level during combat, rather than as part of a broader Legion-wide strategy. This unique method of operation, fighting independently and with limited oversight from the early Imperium's Divisio Militaris, minimized the impact of the Legion's more divergent practices on the morale of Allied units. As a result, there was no concerted effort to integrate the Legion with others of the Imperial host. Various generals and commanders who fought alongside the Ninth Legion tacitly agreed to let it operate according to its own methods. The Legion's early commanders were more akin to warlords than true officers. They enforced discipline at sword point, earned respect through their physical prowess, and were visceral forces of nature on the battlefield. When these respected commanders advanced, the warriors of the Ninth Legion followed. When they held the line, their followers dug in, and when they laid down their blades, those around them ceased the killing. This brutally efficient structure could only be disrupted by inflicting massive casualties, for even if one warlord fell, a dozen veterans were ready to step forward and take his place. Everything changed with the return of Sanguinius. The winged Primarch brought order to the often fractious Legion, imposing a new structure to contain its hunger. While this new order seemed to align with the Principia Bellicosa, the organizational schema of other legions, it differed significantly in practice. The Legion retained the basic company structure, initially forming into 200 companies of approximately 300 Astartes each. By the final years of the Great Crusade, this had increased to 300 companies, each with 500 warriors. Beyond this basic structure, there were many discrepancies, each chosen by Sanguinius to serve a purpose in his plans. These companies were grouped into hosts for campaigns requiring greater force than a single company could provide, though each host was a temporary formation, created and dissolved as tactical needs demanded. Sanguinius also created 3 spheres to encompass his hosts, forming 3 chambers to give order and purpose to the warriors of the Legion. These spheres were separate from the 300 companies and the strictures of the Principia Bellicosa, creating a distinct organizational layer that allowed the transhuman warriors of the Ninth Legion to channel their hunger and rage towards a single goal and conquer it. This structure was not just a blunt instrument, but an elegant and artful plan designed to promote the finer qualities of the Legion while providing an outlet for the more base instincts. It was Sanguinius's masterwork, fulfilling an oath and ensuring the salvation of his children. The outermost of the 3 spheres, known as the Third Sphere, comprised the rank and file of the Legion, the warriors who wielded blade and bolter on the battlefield. These warriors, called the Malak within the Legion, had a singular duty: to fight at the command of their captains. They obeyed, they killed, and they honed the skills imparted to them by the Primarch. Through these simple disciplines and the relentless focus of their transhuman minds, they managed to stave off the depredations of their hunger. Within this sphere, distinctions were few, with only simple titles and orders for those who excelled in specific arts of war and peace. These warriors were the marksmen, poets, and duelists of the Legion, its strong right hand and beating heart. Though these honors were small, they were cherished by those who earned them. The second sphere was made up of the commanders and leaders of the legion, those who stood alongside Sanguinius. Their duty was to command and execute Sanguinius's wishes with alacrity and sound judgment. Unlike those they commanded, they bore the burden of free will and had time to think and ponder as the curse stalked them. They were the planners and strategists of the Crimson Host, directing battles and wars as lesser men directed symphonies, utilizing each instrument at their command to its utmost. As the rank and file found peace in their studies, so too did these mighty leaders become masters of many disciplines, both of the pen and brush as well as the blade and gun. Though not as single-minded as Angren's Red Reapers, or as famed tacticians as Rabut Guilliman's forces, few could match them in the combined arts of war. The first sphere, the pinnacle of Sanguinius's new legion, consisted of the Immortals. These warriors operated in the presence of the Primarch, not within one of the 300 companies, but as his personal guards and servants. Upon induction into the first sphere, each warrior relinquished his common name to adopt a new identity, dedicating himself entirely to the Primarch's service without guilt or regret, and without personal identity interfering with duty. They embodied Sanguinius's wrath, resolve, and vigilance. These warriors were entrusted with the most dangerous tasks, fighting on battlefields and undertaking missions that would tarnish the soul and awaken the hunger within. By assuming new names and personas, the warriors of the first sphere shielded themselves from the toll of their actions, emerging from their service intact and ready to rejoin the ranks. The first sphere of the ancient Blood Angels Legion was made up entirely of a series of separate warrior orders, each of which operated independently of the Legion's standing 300 companies. The first and most famous of these were the Sanguinary Guard, the honor guard of the Primarch himself, but there would be many others, each assigned with a specific task and duty. Few outside of the Legion ever made a complete accounting of these orders, but listed below are the most well-known and important of the warrior orders of the first sphere. Sanguinary Guard, also known as the Ikisat or the Burning Ones, for their ardour and unwavering devotion, each individual warrior of this order bore the title Seraph and was tasked with the ultimate safety of the Primarch's person. On rare occasions, they were also assigned as guards for other commanders as a sign of the Great Angel's favour. Crimson Paladins, also known as the Cheruvim or the Storm Winds, for the sudden onset of their anger and the lasting fervour of their hate. The Crimson Paladins served as the guardians of the Primarch's halls, sanctums and all other Legion facilities under the Blood Angels' control across the galaxy, especially at their outposts on Baal, Canopus and Sif. At the Primarch's command, they also took to the field as an elite combat formation to serve as the embodiments of his determination and the shield of his will. Burning Eyes, also known as the Ophanim, and the Many-Eyed, these secretive warriors were the Angel's Shame, Sanguinius's secret police and shadow agents. They watched their legion for signs of treachery and madness and acted to assuage his guilt for his legion's behaviour by removing the stain. Rarely seen on the battlefield, the Ophanim fought alone and with weapons considered unworthy of true warriors. Angel's Tears, often called the Broken Blade or Dead Hand, for the cruel devastation they brought to the foe, each individual warrior of this order bore the title Erelim, and served as Sanguinius's wrath set forth by his will to scour away those he decreed unworthy of being saved. They were the most commonly seen of the orders of the First Sphere. Serving the dark role of unconventional and special weapons warfare, other legions would refer to as Destroyers. High Host, the High Host, sometimes known as the Archae or the Principatii, was a fraternity of the Blood Angels Legion, one of the lesser orders of the First Sphere of the Legion during the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy. The High Host was made up of those warriors who bore the sorrowful duty of delivering Primarch Sanguinius's ultimate sanction to his enemies. Unlike their brothers in the Angel's Tears, the High Host did not shrink away from showing their true faces to an uncaring galaxy as they deployed weapons born of humanity's darkest nightmares that left a trail of murdered worlds in their wake. The lords of Sanguinius's crimson hosts had structures that mirrored the Principia Bellicosa, but featured notable differences, both major and minor. Authority was meticulously divided across the three spheres of the Legion, with each officer operating strictly within the role designated by the Primarch himself. This overlapping system of authority was less flexible than some other legions, but it provided a solid line of responsibility and control, mitigating the effects of the Blood Angels' ever-present hunger and sudden rage. To prevent any breakdown in authority, the Blood Angels maintained a large number of junior officers, lieutenants and sergeants of various types, all capable of quickly taking the place of the fallen in the heat of battle. On the battlefield, the chain of command was always clearly defined for the Blood Angels and followed without deviation. Disobeying or questioning orders was considered a grave sin, only permissible in the most serious situations and warranting the harshest punishments, even if the act of disobedience proved correct. The primary duty of the Blood Angels' battle brothers was to obey. Individual warriors focused solely on action, suppressing their hunger for blood, while those in command worried about the consequences. In the Blood Angels Legion, all authority stemmed directly from Sanguinius and flowed down from him, first to the Lord Commanders who led the largest divisions of the Legion, then to the captains and beyond in an unbroken and inviolable line. This hierarchy kept Sanguinius's Legion centered and focused. Each command from a sergeant in the heat of battle was considered the word of Sanguinius himself, and each nod from a captain was viewed as a gesture from the Primarch. The Blood Angels also had unique elements, similar to many other legions, with their own titles and names for authority and a range of lesser divisions suited to their style. Those who commanded hosts and had authority over lesser captains were called Archines instead of the traditional title of Praetor, and also held the title of Dominion for company command. Within a company, junior officers were known as Powers, who commanded the ranks during war, and Virtues, who served as exemplars in other endeavours. Many were distinguished by their focus of devotion, such as Archines of Wisdom and Powers of the Blade. These distinctions were marks of respect, as much as tactical designations in a legion whose Primarch urged his Astartes to be more than simple weapons. By the final years of the Great Crusade, the Blood Angels were considered one of the preeminent legions of the imperial host, if not the foremost. Under Sanguinius's leadership, the Legion underwent a profound transformation, leaving behind its past as the Revenant Legion. Once a near-forgotten rearguard, it had risen to prominence, leading every advance and earning accolades across the Emperor's far-reaching domains. This formidable fighting force, capable of toppling empires and laying waste to worlds, was unwavering in its loyalty to the Emperor. It formed the strong foundation upon which the Imperium was built, and as long as it stood, the Empire would endure. The Legion boasted nearly 120,000 warriors, accounting for casualties organized into up to 300 individual companies. This made it one of the largest legions at the time, with only the vast numbers of the Ultramarines and Iron Warriors surpassing it. Each of these hosts was predisposed towards assault and orbital drop operations, with a significant portion of its infantry equipped for close-quarters combat and its vehicles designed for high-speed strikes and breakthrough maneuvers. While the Blood Angels had fewer defensive assets compared to more versatile legions, their strength lay in their operational initiative, making large-scale defensive conflicts seem unthinkable at the height of the Great Crusade. The Legion was spread across the galaxy in numerous hosts, each engaged in large-scale operations. They also maintained custodial forces at their main bases and redoubts on Baal, Sif, and Canopus. Of these, Baal was the largest, transformed by the mechanicum of the Forge World Anvilus into a major manufacturing site at Sanguinius's invitation. This rad-scoured world, where no unmodified human could tread, housed a facility that rivaled many smaller Forge worlds, supplying much of the Ninth Legion's munitions and technical needs. Baal, as Sanguinius's homeworld, warranted a substantial standing guard, primarily provided by the Crimson Paladins, though at least one company was usually present for refit. Canopus also served as a manufacturing centre, albeit smaller and less sophisticated than Baal, producing vast quantities of shells and other munitions to support the legion's cannons. It was a common waypoint for troops heading to the front lines of the Great Crusade, with many units resting there. Saif, the smallest of the legion's outposts, served mainly as a recruitment source from its perpetually warring tribes and was guarded by a single squad of Crimson Paladins. The legion's fleet assets were equally impressive, comprising over 300 capital-class warships, many of which were heavy cruisers or battleships of various classes. These voidcraft were outfitted for orbital assault, equipped with banks of heavy linear cannons for bombardment, launch rails for swarms of drop pods, or vast hangar bays for operating large Stormbird or Thunderhawk dropships. At first glance, it might seem surprising that a Space Marine Legion so proud of its traditions would set aside its individuality. But the events of the Horus Heresy profoundly impacted the Blood Angels. Consequently, they were among the first to adopt Robert Guilliman's Codex Astartes. After Horus's defeat on Terra, the death of Sanguinius left the Legion without a clear line of succession. Various factions formed around potential candidates, and the emerging presence of the Flaw further complicated the Legion's future. Ultimately, it was Ascalon, the sole survivor of the Sanguinary Guard, who guided the Blood Angels' destiny. Ascalon, recognizing that the Blood Angels had more pressing concerns than organizational doctrine, ensured the division of the Legion into the chapters that exist today. These included the Blood Angels, who retained the old Legion's heraldry and traditions, the Flesh Tearers, the Angels Vermilion, the Angels in Carmine, and the Angels Sanguine. What became of Ascalon after this point remains unrecorded, but his legacy endures in the chapters he established. The Blood Angels and their successor chapters adhere to the Codex Astartes as closely as their flaw permits, using its strictures as a form of discipline to restrain the Red Thirst. Accordingly, each chapter maintains a nominal strength of 1,000 battle brothers, divided into 10 companies of roughly 100 Space Marines each. The first company comprises the chapter's most experienced veterans, all of whom have spent solar decades, if not Terran centuries, in constant warfare. The second through fifth companies form the backbone of the chapter, the battle companies that make up the core of any strike force. The remaining companies serve as reserve and training formations. The sixth and seventh companies are tactical companies used to reinforce a strike force or battle line when the battle companies are overstretched. The eighth and ninth companies are specialist formations composed of assault squads and devastator squads, respectively. These companies have a more limited tactical scope and are deployed only when an overwhelmingly focused approach is needed. Finally, the 10th Company is considered by many to be the future of the chapter, as it is where scouts hone their skills in the Space Marine way of war. Of all the chapter's companies, the 10th fights least commonly as a single unit. Though not yet fully trained Space Marines, the scouts' skills are highly valued, and it is common for strike forces to have a squad or two of scouts attached. Though each company can fight as an independent unit, a Blood Angel strike force typically comprises several squads from different companies, assembled on an ad hoc basis, tailored to the specific mission. These strike forces are usually assigned code names, such as Bloodspear, Liberator, or Primarch's Wrath. Despite this, a strike force is often referred to by the company that provides the majority of its personnel, or by the officer leading it. The company at the core of a strike force can be bolstered by auxiliary squads from the reserve companies, which become the 11th squad and higher for the duration of the operation. Each company, except for the 10th, maintains a variety of support vehicles in addition to the personal armor and weaponry of its battle brothers. These vehicles range from Rhino and Razorback transports to bikes and land speeders, ready to be deployed as the tactical situation demands. This versatility enables even a single Blood Angels company to undertake multiple tactical and strategic roles. Unusually for a Space Marine chapter, the Blood Angels possess enough Land Raiders to use them as line transports rather than elite support units. The source of the Blood Angels' ample supply of Land Raiders is a mystery outside the chapter. It is speculated that either more of their vehicles survived the Horus Heresy, or that the Blood Angels had stronger ties with the Adeptus Mechanicus in the past than their current strained relations would suggest. While the chapter adheres to the Codex Astartes, they often modify the engines of their Rhino APCs to enhance speed. These modifications, however, make the vehicles prone to breakdowns if the engines are overtaxed. The Blood Angels have also modified other vehicles. The Baal Predator, for example, is equipped with a twin-linked assault cannon and is designed to unleash a torrent of fire as the Blood Angels advance, devastating infantry and light vehicles. Similarly, the Blood Angels Furioso Dreadnought variant replaces the heavy weaponry typically found on Space Marine dreadnoughts with a second close combat weapon, enhancing its melee capabilities. No angel ever descended from the heavens with as much sound and fury as do we. Sergeant Drusani, Blood Angels. First company in battle, the Blood Angels Legion embodied the Emperor's wrath against those who spurned the gift of unity. Led by their angelic Primarch Sanguinius, their arrival was akin to apocalyptic judgment upon the guilty. Descending from the skies on wings of fire, the Ninth Legion conquered lost human worlds with their supernatural fury, instilling dread and awe. Entire nations fell to their knees, cowering before the wrath and splendor of these Red Angels, fearing they too would perish under the Space Marines' gleaming blades. No mercy was extended to Xenos. The Legion's wrath manifested as an unrelenting tide of carnage that ceased only with complete extermination. Throughout the Great Crusade, the Ninth Legion became renowned for its wars of ultimatum. These campaigns of domination against non-compliant worlds began with Sanguinius, or one of his praetors, offering a single opportunity to embrace unification or face a day of revelation, where they would endure the unleashed fury of the Blood Angels. Many foes, faced with the gathered Ninth Legion hosts, were overcome with dread and awe, capitulating without hesitation. Those who resisted witnessed the angelic Sanguinius transformed into savage fury, delivering blinding destruction from above. The Ninth Legion's tactical doctrines emphasized powerful shock assaults to shatter enemy resistance in a single, devastating blow. Flamer and melter weapons were strongly favored at the tactical level due to their effectiveness and the fearsome display they provided in action. The Ninth Legion was not only known for its shock assault tactics, but also for its ability to stand against overwhelming odds, dragging its enemies down even in death throes. To their fellow Legiones Astartes, such feats of resilience often seemed supernatural, attributable not to a single tactical plan, doctrine, or biological trait, but to their unshakable will to endure. This will was fueled by the rage and grief wrought in their hearts by the deaths of their battle brothers. To the Blood Angels, such battles were known as days of sorrows, when few stood against many, selling their lives dearly, with their names and deeds eternally reborn, in the most sacrosanct of the Legion's rites of battle and remembrance. When the bulk of the Legion was missing for years at Cygnus Prime, the remaining lone ships and garrisons in an imperium riven by war repeatedly found themselves outnumbered by foes. Many experienced their own days of sorrow, but the number of traitor foes who died alongside them was far greater as they passed, burning into the night. The companies of the Blood Angels typically engage in combat similarly to most other Space Marine forces, favoring aggressive and decisive spaceborne and planetary assaults using highly mobile units. Their approach often involves dedicated assault units, including the Death Company, advancing on the weakest point of the enemy's position at the earliest opportunity under covering fire. These units are then supported by mounted tactical squads and armoured forces to exploit the breakthrough. This strategy allows the assault units to push into successive enemy positions behind the front line, disrupting any organised response, while the remaining forces mop up the lingering enemies and move into supporting positions, pinning down the next target with concentrated firepower. The Blood Angels' passion for perfection in all aspects, martial and otherwise, combined with their longevity, is evident in their exemplary strategic and tactical planning. However, they cannot be relied upon to hold a position with the same discipline as the Ultramarines or Dark Angels. The Black Rage can seize any Marine during battle, driving him to charge forward in a frenzied attempt to tear the enemy apart. While this often leads to victories in the most unlikely situations through sheer aggression, Imperial commanders sometimes hesitate to request the Blood Angels' assistance, fearing that their savagery could become uncontrollable. Blood Angels' flaw. Say what you like, I will not fight alongside these madmen. The past proves nothing except that the Blood Angels are cursed and but a single step from damnation. Euron Captain, Patriarchs of Ulixis. Chapter among all the warriors of the Legiones Astartes, the Blood Angels underwent perhaps the most profound transformation from their human origins to become Space Marines. This transformation was even more pronounced and fundamental than that experienced by the Space Wolves or the Salamanders, each of which had their own unique stigmata. The aggressive rewriting of an aspirant's gene helix by the blood of their Primarch Sanguinius could transfigure the rad-scarred and twisted inhabitants of Baal into perfected warriors. These warriors became living icons of the physical ideal of the Legiones Astartes, each one echoing the fearsome glory of Sanguinius known as the Angel. However, there was a steep price for this power. The process of transformation was more arcane, elaborate and painful than that endured by any other legion. Even with the direct infusion of their Primarch's own blood to stabilize the process, the rate of fatalities among aspirants was alarmingly high. Moreover, some argued that the mental scars suffered by those who survived the change were equally deep, instilling a sense of cause and purpose that manifested as unflinching, unreasoning fanaticism bordering on madness. This certainty could, in mere moments, turn to insane fury when their purpose was challenged. Every Space Marine chapter is deeply defined by the legacy of their Primarch. Through their gene seed, these mighty beings shaped their sons' bodies, while their teachings and philosophy influenced their minds. Yet none among the Primarchs had as profound an effect upon their progeny as Sanguinius. Although it is known to only a few, the Blood Angels and their successor chapters are a dying breed, afflicted by a dreadful genetic flaw. Once the most golden and blessed of all the Adeptus Astartes chapters, the Blood Angels now shun the company of others where possible. Some Blood Angels are said to be driven by a terrible death-seeking madness called the Black Rage, induced by visions of their Primarch's death. Others suffer from the Red Thirst, a craving for blood which some claim may be the first sign of chaos corruption. It is known that some Blood Angels spend much time seeking a cure for these conditions, though most have resigned themselves to the slow and terrible decline of their chapter. Some savants argue that Sanguinius was more touched by chaos than the other Primarchs during his gestation capsule's flight through the warp after he and his superhuman brothers were stolen from the Emperor's gene laboratory. They cite his wings, an obvious mutation, as evidence of this. Their argument suggests that the gene seed extracted from him was genetically flawed and corrupted even before the first Blood Angel Space Marines were created from it, thus preordaining terrible consequences. Other Astartes scholars deny this, noting that the Emperor himself trusted Sanguinius implicitly and personally oversaw the creation of the Blood Angels. Certain heretics counter with the argument that the Emperor also once trusted Horus above all others, and even he could make mistakes. Other Imperial scholars claim that the flaw lies in the process used to create each new generation of Blood Angels Astartes. They assert that it has crept in through the generations because the Blood Angels use a process known as insanguination to activate the implanted gene seed organs within their aspirants. All Space Marine chapters use gene seed organs to unleash and control the metabolic processes that transform an ordinary mortal into a Space Marine. The gene seed is encoded with all the information needed to reshape ordinary human cells into the specialized organs Space Marines possess, in instances where they are not directly implanted after being cultured in vitro. The gene seed contains genetically engineered viral machines that rebuild the male human body according to the biological template contained within it. However, even from the beginning of the Astartes' existence, there was never a set way to activate these functions of the gene seed. During the first founding of the 30th millennium, when the Space Marine legions were first created, the process was highly experimental. Various methods of controlling and managing the transformation from mortal to Astartes were tested. This led to the Space Wolves using the ritual known as blooding, the Imperial Fists using the Hand of Faith process, the White Scars conducting the rites of the Risen Moon, and the Blood Angels employing the ritual of insanguination. Initially, the process of insanguination involved injecting the aspirants with tiny samples of their Primarch's own blood. This practice ended with the tragic death of Sanguinius at the hands of Horus during the Siege of Terra. However, some of his blood was preserved within the Blood Angel's artifact, known as the Red Grail. The living blood could not be kept this way for long, so it was injected into the veins of the sanguinary priests. In this way, they became living hosts to the power of Sanguinius. To this day, drinking the collected blood of the assembled sanguinary priests from the relic called the Red Grail is part of the induction ritual for all Blood Angels priests and the chapter's aspirants. Blood taken from these sanguinary priests is used to trigger the transformation of aspirants into Space Marines. It is possible that over the countless generations since the time of the Horus heresy, the cells within the Blood Angel's gene seed have mutated. Initially, these changes occurred slowly, but have accelerated in recent years, resulting in cumulative errors in DNA replication that have manifested as the flaw. Whatever the cause of the flaw, it is certain that its grip on the Blood Angels has grown stronger, and their tendency towards self-destructive insanity has increased. Unless it can be halted and reversed, the chapter and all of its successors among the Sanguinary Brotherhood are doomed to extinction. The flaw of the Blood Angels has also been attributed to a combination of the genetic defects in the Legion's Homophagia gene seed organ implant and the psychic disturbance created during the final moments of Sanguinius's life. During the battles of the Horus heresy on Terra and Mars, the stored gene seed imprint of the Blood Angels was lost. This forced the Legion to extract the gene seed needed for their reconstruction after the heresy from the fallen body of their Primarch himself. Every Space Marine created from the gene seed drawn from Sanguinius after his death was doomed to fall to the floor. In the 10,000-year history of the Legion and its second founding successor chapters, only 3 Space Marines have managed to overcome the Black Rage once it manifested. Chief Librarian Mephiston, twice, Brother Raphan, both with the assistance of visions of Sanguinius, and the Librarian Ashok of the Angel Sanguine. The Blood Angels and their successor. Chapters continue to suffer from the psychic imprint left by Sanguinius's death or the demonic wound inflicted on their Primarch at Cygnus Prime. This psychic scar can drive them insane before or during battle, causing them to experience the same rage Sanguinius felt against Horus and his traitors during the Siege of Terra. This condition, known as the Black Rage, is largely irrecoverable, with only a few Blood Angels having ever managed to overcome the gene curse. Those afflicted are confined in the Tower of Amareo, named after an ancient chapter master of the Blood Angels, on their homeworld. Rather than allow their battle brothers to face a slow descent into madness, the Blood Angels form those newly succumbed to the Black Rage into a special unit called the Death Company. Clad in specially painted black power armor, these warriors are often led by chapter officers, particularly chaplains, who can still communicate orders to the frenzied troops and are obeyed, possibly because chaplains directly represent the authority of the Emperor. The Death Company members are sent on the most perilous missions, hoping for a swift and honorable death in combat. The Black Rage seems to imbue its victims with a measure of Sanguinius's might, granting them the strength to tear their foes apart in brutal melee. Mysteriously, the flaw that causes the Black Rage also appears to extend the victim's lifespan until they finally succumb to the madness. Commander Dante, born over 1,000 standard years ago, is by far the oldest living Space Marine, excluding those interred in a dreadnought. Deep within the psyche of every Blood Angel is a destructive yearning, a battle fury and blood hunger that must be constantly restrained. Few battle brothers can indefinitely keep this red thirst in check. It is not uncommon for Blood Angels to temporarily succumb to its lure during intense combat. The red thirst is the Blood Angel's darkest secret and greatest curse. but it also brings a humility and understanding of their own failings, making them the most noble of the Space Marines. The fate of those completely overtaken by the Red Thirst is known only to the chapter. There are tales of a secret chamber atop the Tower of Amareo in the fortress monastery on Baal, where howling cries demand the blood of the living. However, none are willing to reveal the secrets of this haunted place. There have been incidents where the Blood Angels, stationed on distant worlds, have seen local inhabitants disappear, only to be found later drained of blood. It is possible that this is the work of cultists attempting to discredit the chapter. Some superstitious locals might offer sacrifices to their godlike visitors. Or it could be that some Blood Angels overcome by the Red Thirst are responsible for these deaths. There were a couple of Blood Angels freed from the floor. Mephiston, originally known as Brother Calistarius, a librarian of the Blood Angels with considerable ability and strength of character. He was nearly overwhelmed by the curse during the Second War for Armageddon. While part of the relief force for Hades' hive, Calistarius was trapped for 7 days and nights in the rubble of the collapsed ecclesiastical building. A vision of Sanguinius helped him fight off the effects, and he was reborn as Mephiston, the Lord of Death. With his full psychic potential unlocked, he quickly rose to the position of Chief Librarian. Mephiston is seen as the spiritual son of Sanguinius, a symbol of hope to his chapter. He is now regarded as the most powerful librarian in the Astartes and possibly the most potent psyker in the Imperium, second only to the Emperor himself. Rafen, a battle brother who was later promoted to sergeant, Rafen had to kill his actual sibling and fellow Blood Angel, Archeo, who was falsely claiming to be Sanguinius reborn. In reality, Archeo was deceived by Chaos, having been mutated to resemble Sanguinius. Rafen then had to succumb to the gene curse to unleash the power of the Holy Spear of Telesto, a weapon once wielded by Sanguinius to defeat Malphalax, a Lord of Change who had deceived Archeo. Despite the immense struggle, Rafen eventually regained control of his consciousness, and also succeeded in helping Mephiston overcome the black rage within himself for a second time. Sanguinius was always a visionary. In his early years, he aspired to lead his people to a better life. Upon joining the Great Crusade, he expanded this vision to encompass all of humanity, seeking to end the horrors that had arisen from the collapse of human civilization during the Age of Strife. The Primarch of the Blood Angels profoundly influenced his chapter. There is a mystical aspect to many of the Blood Angels' doctrines, along with a strong belief that the course of events can be improved. The transformation of an irradiated, genetically damaged scavenger into a tall, proud and handsome warrior stands as living proof of this belief. This conviction is evident in all the Blood Angels do. They strive for perfection. Their artworks are beautiful and symmetrical, their martial disciplines are practiced relentlessly, and their doctrines are imbued with a sense of mortality and humanity's fallen greatness. Physically, the Blood Angels are among the longest-lived of all Space Marines. Their gene seed significantly extends their lifespan, making it common for Blood Angels to reach 1,000 Terran years of age. The current chapter master, Commander Dante, has lived for nearly 1,100 standard years. These extended lifespans allow the Blood Angels to perfect their skills in both art and war. They have centuries to master their chosen disciplines, which accounts for the ornate nature of their armor and banners, among the most elaborate produced by the Adeptus Astartes. One of the chapter's strangest traits was observed by Inquisitor Gorillion during his visit to their fortress monastery on Baal. The Blood Angels often sleep in the sarcophagi used to create them, believing that this timeless slumber brings them closer to Sanguinius and offers insights into their forefathers' psyche. While sleeping in their sarcophagi, their blood is cleansed and purified. The chapter hopes this practice will slow the potential genetic degeneration until a permanent solution for the Black Rage can be found. Despite these peculiarities, the Blood Angels enforce the Emperor's will with unmatched fervor and zeal. Their martial record shows that they have been responsible for many of the Imperium's successful campaigns, with countless aliens and heretics slain in the Emperor's name. Like their fellow Astartes chapters, The Blood Angels maintain a librarium composed of powerful psychers, highly trained to master the warp. Each chapter selects its librarians in its own unique manner, either from seed worlds, like the majority of its initiates, or from gifted psychers brought to the Scholastica Psychana. Most chapters follow the ancient methods detailed in the Codex Astartes to train and test their chosen psychers. Blood Angels librarians are trained in this traditional way with only a few minor variances and live by the word of the Codex. When not thwarting enemy warlords' plans in war zones from Damocles to the Cadian Gate, librarians attend to a host of other, less violent duties. These include testing recruits, tending to their own training, and maintaining their chapters' librariums. Overseeing these sacred places, librarians are custodians of whispered secrets and hidden truths. Each librarium, filled with ancient tomes and sacred scrolls, houses every text laid down by the chapter or relevant to its existence. Every fortress monastery boasts a librarium that stores lore, battle records, and psychically active artifacts like force weapons. Famous victories, shameful defeats, and the legends of the chapter's heroes are recorded within, and librarians are fiercely dedicated to preserving this legacy. In addition to the main librarium on a chapter's homeworld, many battle barges feature smaller librariums for use during long campaigns. Though no two librariums are identical, they often share a common design, built around a central pillar, with racks of books and scrolls spiraling into antechambers filled with rows of written works, data slates, chronicle stones, and Nemo slates. These antechambers document great battles, record the final words of heroes, and capture the secrets of vanquished foes. The central pillar typically houses the oldest available copy of the Codex Astartes, preserved on a stasis plinth or protected by hollow reflection. Many lords of the Adeptus Astartes visit these quiet, dusty halls to draw inspiration and resolve from this ancient book in times of darkness. To be entombed within the armoured sarcophagus of a dreadnought is the highest honour a space marine can receive. Though his body may be shattered, his mind and spirit remain in service to the chapter, his Primarch, and the Emperor. Typically, those interred in this manner are veterans, line officers, or company captains, warriors who fell at the front lines. Occasionally, a different type of warrior is chosen, a librarian whose formidable psychic abilities endure even after his body is ruined. Librarian dreadnoughts combine the firepower and armour of a Furioso dreadnought with the psychic prowess of the entombed librarian. The librarian's mind becomes a weapon, capable of unleashing devastating blasts of raw warp energy, arcs of etheric power, and waves of dread that shatter enemy morale. Some librarian dreadnoughts replace one of their power claws with a force blade, a large dreadnought-grade weapon embedded with psycho-conductive material. This allows them to channel their psychic powers, tearing the fabric of reality at the point of impact. Such a weapon can penetrate even the strongest armor, making librarian dreadnoughts among the most revered of the chapter's ancients, whose counsel is respected by even the most seasoned company captains. It is extremely rare for Blood Angels librarian dreadnoughts to serve in the Death Watch. This has only happened under unique circumstances, typically when a librarian falls during the Long Watch and a dreadnought body is available for his remains. Most battle brothers who fall in this way are returned to their chapters, but on rare occasions a librarian has insisted on remaining at the Watch Fortress. These wishes are communicated through mind speech rather than spoken words, and the indomitable spirit of such warriors is so strong that even the Watch Commander honours their request. The wounded hero is then interred in a dreadnought, allowing him to continue his vigil until his remains can be returned to his home chapter. Some choose to stay long after their vigil is complete, and their apocryphal oath fulfilled, sleeping for centuries within the stasis-sealed vaults at the heart of the watch station until they are needed to fight once more. The Blood Angels are profoundly influenced by the legacy of Sanguinius and the harsh environment of their chapter planet, Baal. Few planets in the Imperium could have as severe an impact on the human soul as Baal and its moons, Baal Prime and Baal Secundus. In ancient times, Baal and its moons had Earth-like atmospheres. Baal was a world of rust-red deserts, while its moons were paradises where humans lived in harmony with nature, leading lives of ease and freedom. The people of Baal were exceptional artisans, creating grand monuments and carving mountains into statues of their rulers and gods. They even ventured onto desolate Baal, leaving colonies and breathtaking edifices in their wake. The cause of the catastrophic changes to this idyllic state remains unknown. However, during the fearful events marking the end of the Dark Age of technology, Baal's moons suffered immensely. Ancient weapons of mass destruction were unleashed, turning cities into smouldering plains of glass, grasslands into polluted deserts, and seas into toxic sludge. Millions perished, threatening humanity's survival in the Baal system. Yet, some people clung to life on the edges of radioactive deserts, scavenging through the remains of their once great civilization. In the ensuing chaos, some even turned to cannibalism in their desperation. Over the following centuries, accumulated chemical and radioactive toxins caused the survivors to devolve into mutants, grotesque parodies of their ancestors. Only a few retained their humanity and semblance of sane behavior. But these were the embattled minority, amidst a savage culture evolving amid the ruins. The only remaining social unit was the tribe. For both humans and mutant cannibals, kin were the only reliable allies. The people of the Baal system became nomads, constantly moving, scavenging ruins and warring to preserve their spoils. Tribes fought incessantly, with alliances shifting as each strove for supremacy and survival. Extinction awaited the slow and the weak. Where the moons had once been paradises, they had become living hells. The few surviving baseline humans faced a constant struggle, wandering the surface in ramshackle vehicles, hoping their radiation suits would protect them, and dreading the ominous click of their rad counters. It seemed humanity was doomed, destined to be overrun by feuding mutant tribes. Then hope arrived from the star-strewn heavens, the winged Primarch Sanguinius. Sanguinius matured quickly and rose to lead the tribe known as the Blood. Under his guidance, they pushed back the mutant tide. Eventually, the Emperor of Mankind arrived on Baal, seeking his missing gene son stolen by the ruinous powers. Unlike some Primarchs who resisted the Emperor, Sanguinius immediately recognized him and knelt before the Master of Mankind. The Emperor raised him up, saw the nobility and fairness of his people, despite their genetic diseases and mutations, and offered to transform the best warriors into space marines. The rest were honorably left to defend humanity's birthright on Baal Secundus. The Blood Angels' mighty fortress monastery, the Arx Angelicum, was built on Baal. Since Sanguinius's time, the Blood Angels have continued to recruit from the tribes of the Blood on Baal Secundus and Baal Prime, where a colony was established shortly after the Horus heresy. To determine who is worthy to join the Blood Angels, adolescents from the feral tribes of Baal Secundus participate in violent games and tournaments, battling against the harsh landscape and their peers. These contests are held at the settlement of Angel's Fall, where a mighty statue of Sanguinius stands, marking the location of his landing on Baal Secundus and overseeing the proceedings. This time of challenge is traditionally announced by heralds who visit each tribe in flying chariots, Thunderhawk gunships. The first trial is to reach the place of challenge by any means necessary. Contestants must traverse the hostile rad deserts of Baal Secundus, leap from high cliffs with crude hang gliders, avoid fire scorpions and other mutated predators in the canyons, and climb the mountain to the place of challenge. This process eliminates the weakest aspirants. The desert's hazards are numerous, and only youths of extraordinary skill and courage manage to reach the place of challenge. Upon arrival, gladiatorial contests are held where they compete for the 50 or so available spots. Those who succeed are taken up in sky chariots. Those who fail are left behind to guard the testing site until the next generation's competition or return to their tribes. Successful aspirants are taken to the Blood Angels' fortress monastery, the Arx Angelicum, on Baal itself. They are paraded before the chapter members and then escorted into the great chapel, where they witness great wonders, including the unmasked faces of their future brothers, with their sharp eye teeth and sleek, beautiful features. At this stage, the recruits are far from handsome. Most aspirants bear the marks of their hard lives. Radiation scars, stunted growth from malnutrition, lesions, and carcinomas are common. All aspirants observe a vigil in the great chapel before drinking from the red grail brought by the sanguinary priests. This grail contains viral catalysts that begin the transformation into transhuman Astartes. Slumber soon overtakes them, and they are taken by servitors to the apothecarian, where Sanguinius's gene seed is implanted. From there, they are moved to the Hall of Sarcophagi and placed within golden sarcophagi. Life support nodes are attached to them, and for the next Terran year, they are fed intravenously with a mixture of nutrients and the blood of Sanguinius, while the gene seed works its magic. Many aspirants die at this stage, their bodies unable to handle the metabolic strain of the physical changes. Those who survive grow rapidly, gaining muscle mass and the extra internal organs that mark a true space marine. During this time, they experience strange dreams as the gene seed carries memories of Sanguinius, permeating their souls with his essence. Occasionally, an aspirant awakens well before the year is up, facing the claustrophobic darkness, often leading to mental infirmity. These dreams may continue to haunt the Blood Angels, both in sleep and sometimes when awake. When the aspirants finally emerge from their sarcophagi, they are forever changed. They are tall, strong and superhumanly powerful, with restructured bodies and features that echo their angelic forebears' beauty. Their senses are keener, their muscles stronger than tempered steel, ready to begin their training as space marines. Now Blood Angels neophytes, they have only completed the first stage of becoming a full Blood Angels Astartes. They traditionally serve in the chapter's 10th company as scouts, before joining one of the other companies as fully fledged initiates.